Our next speaker, Martin Donnelly, you've probably seen him at Lotusphere. You may have his book, or one of his books, or both of his books, also a co-author of the Portable Command Guide and the Mastering XPages book. Martin is the team lead for the XPages runtime. He's out of IBM Ireland, and he tweets as well as Tweeter Donnelly. Martin, welcome.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you to Dan and to Ed for their demonstrations. I'll see if I can keep the flag flying here on the XPages runtime side. So without further ado, I'll jump right into the slides. As Dan mentioned, the Upgrade Pack 1 content has all found its way into the Social Edition beta, and so all of the runtime controls and the design time tooling on all of the platforms. One little thing I'd like to add to that is that the Team Room XL and Discussion XL, these were so named because they were templates that depended on extension library content and had to coexist with the Team Room and Discussion templates themselves. So we named separate versions and put them out there in UP1 for people who took UP1, and given that the Upgrade Pack was an extra part of the runtime, if you like, that might not necessarily be on everybody's installation. So given that once you go to the Social Edition, that you automatically have all the content of UP1, then Team Room and XL and Discussion XL become Team Room 9 and Discussion 9. Since 8.5.1 we always had an XPages discussion template, and this will simply be superseded. Notice that version, I'm kind of proud to say, in one sense has been upgraded to the extent that it's no longer relevant, and that the new Discussion XL template effectively becomes our discussion template going forward. So new discussion templates available out of the box in Social Edition. Also a good time maybe to talk about our key components. There are some key components really at the heart of XPages, none so much more than Dojo. Dojo 1.8 is the latest and greatest Dojo release that's out there. Our community are always encouraging us to get the latest version of Dojo and all its good features into the build and be integrated with that. So with the next beta release, you will see Dojo 1.8 has indeed been integrated, and we've reworked some of our controls that are tightly bound to Dojo based on that version. Specifically the daytime picker and the type ahead control. Well, the daytime picker has been reworked, and we are in the process of making some amendments to the type ahead control. The reason I mention these is because these controls up to now have had dependencies on internal Dojo APIs and tend to break when we move from one version to another. So we're looking to get to a point where maybe between these controls and a couple of mobile ones that we have no dependencies that are too sensitive to a change in a Dojo release, so that we could, for example, upgrade Dojo by means of an upgrade pack out of cycle, which would be of good benefit to both us and to you. So Dojo 1.8, if you want to see what's in it, then all of the issues fixed are available online. Similarly with CK Editor, this is the magic control that really brings to you all of the rich text content for editing that's in XPages and in Notes Domino through XPages. So the latest version will be 3.6.3, possibly upgraded to 3.6.5. There's a marginal difference between the two, just some bug fixes and some extra international language support. But there's been a lot of work going on in and around CK Editor itself, whether that be the rich text handling and display, or whether it be how we convert rich text artifacts from notes or whatever. So customers had reported instances. There's just a lot of use cases, I guess, to handle here. It's very, very difficult to predict in advance what exactly customers will do, but we did have instances around multiple instances of rich text editors on a page, or different combinations of tables and other artifacts around inline images, attachment handling, and some imagery sizing issues. So we have worked very hard actually to straighten all of that stuff out and get the most robust rich text handling feature set yet, and make that available in Social Edition. So a lot of issues addressed there. Better behavior out of the box from CKEditor in terms of its iOS behaviors. People have tried XPages on applications on tablets like the iPad and so forth, and questions have arisen around CKEditor and its behavior. So what we can say now is this certainly is the best CKEditor experience yet on that platform, and that XPages, given that we extend CKEditor in some ways by providing our own specialized functions in certain parts, that we are as good an out-of-the-box experience as the native CKEditor itself if you were to use that standalone from the web. So there's possibly a couple of issues there still, minor issues in and around behavior on tablets and such that I think CKEditor themselves are looking at addressing, but a much improved experience all around here for CKEditor users. You'll notice that there's a little star here next to the spell checker. And before I go there, I'm just going to say that we upgraded the active content filter as well, which is another core feature technology that we always like to give you the best of to make sure that your protection through rich content via the CKEditor is always at the utmost level of protection. So back to spell checker. I'd like to work in a demo as early as this if I can. So if I just went to one of our templates at the moment, one of the aforementioned templates, I'll just try and minimize this utility here. Okay, so here, if I do a new document, inside one of the templates you can see that I'm just going to do a spell check test. Just change the size of my font to make things easy to view, and you could say something like this mightn't always necessarily be considered spelling mistakes in some of the cities I've traveled to. So check your spelling. You can see that boys is replaced with boys in this case, and girls is replaced with girls. So you can see here that this extra and new little button that you have on the CKEditor is available and invokes the spell checker. It uses on the Notes client, it does use the standard Notes dictionaries. So a good experience. It is already in the Domino server, so available for the web in beta. The same technology, as I say, will be available on the Notes client. We're just looking to resolve a installation issue, just to make sure that we get all of the stuff in the pack for beta at the moment. So that is one little demo lettuce associated with CKEditor and all things rich text. If for a moment I just revert to Designer, you can see here I have actually, if I were to go and create a new application, you can see what the point I alluded to earlier on, where the discussion template 9 is now available. This is the equivalent of, I said, of discussion XL, and at the bottom here you have Team Room 9. These are now available in the Social Edition, which is the equivalent of Team Room XL. Now, that's what I would have done to create this particular help desk application here, which is an instance of the Team Room 9 application. So you can see, you know, how does this application work? It's quite an advanced template. You can see, in fact, if I were to look at its launch page, we can do that here. There's some new artifacts in Designer, but you can see its launch page is in fact the page called main.xsp. And when I go to that page, you may be surprised to see that, gee, this is blank. Well, in fact, it's not blank. It is blank in terms of visual controls, but in terms of the actual page itself, you can see if I go to source mode that it's got an after page load event that executes some server-side JavaScript. And really, what that script is about, even if you're not familiar with server-side JavaScript code, you can see really that it's querying a user agent. This is the string that really identifies the device from which the request is coming, and depending on whether it's an iPhone or an Android or an iPad, it redirects the current request to a mobile page, a page that's been designed specifically for mobile devices. Otherwise, again, at the pseudo-logic level, right, it just simply sends you to the home.xsp, which would be a page designed for a full web browser or a notes client, yeah, as the case may be. So you can see here that there's a certain sort of logic involved in hand coding the stuff, and what we wanted to do was to make that just a little bit easier for folks in the current release. So I'll just so what you can see in the social edition is that all of the extension library tools are here for you, and you've got this redirect control that you can simply drag and drop on the page. The redirect control has properties. The properties really just allow you to add rules around. Here's what I want to happen when the agent is a phone, is a tablet, or is some sort of custom device. And I guess the best way to see this in action is to look at the design of the application itself. So to do that, I will look at the forms. We here have a main document form. We have a topic thread. The main document form is the underlying native notes form that's behind any document created with it. What you can see here is when we look at the form is that for web access on this tab, whenever a document created with this form is accessed on the web, then it simply defers to topic thread. Topic thread in turn is the next page that in fact has a fully populated version of the redirect control that I kind of just dropped on the main page earlier. So if we look at a real life example of this, you can see that it's got a redirect phone rule and a redirect tablet rule, and then it redirects to mobile.xsp in both cases for those particular devices. So that's all well and good. That's it from the design phase, and what I'll do next is I'll take you to see how that works in practice by looking at this application on the web. So this redirect control, that's the design time experience. If I wanted to go back to the web and show you how this works, then what we could do something quite simple. I could go home. I could create a new document. So we could say, so do a redirect test. I could add some reviewers to this. So I can select some individual reviewers like Samantha, Darren, myself, and Gail. Add info pre-conference. So I can save this, and at some point later I can come in, edit it, and I can send that. I can use this action here to send the link to the reviewers. You can see the notification indicating that the mail notifications have been successfully sent. So if I go to Samantha Darren's mail and I refresh, you can see my redirect test has actually arrived. If I open the mail, you can see that I've got a standard X Pages link in there where I'm being redirected to the actual page, so I can go off and visit that page. If, on the other hand, I was on a mobile device and this is my inbox, you can see the mail has already arrived there also, and I've got this Safari browser set up to emulate an iPhone control, so I can open this up, and you can see this that here in fact we have the same link being set. And you can see that a different link has been generated. Excuse me. If I were just to copy that out, see if I can just copy link here. Maybe go to Notepad. So you can see that as opposed to the link shown in the mail first day, that it's been rewritten as a help desk mobile.xsp. In fact, that's the link after the document has been opened. I can delete the document from here, from my mobile, and the whole experience should have round tripped now, so that you can see that the document has now actually been deleted. So in fact, I think I could summarize this with the slide easily, very easily. The idea of the redirect control is to encapsulate the logic that you would otherwise have to code by hand, and you can see the example of a mobile rule where you take a particular open document that's redirected to a form. The form, in fact, can then, based on your client, redirect it to a mobile that XSP, as happened in this case with the document ID, the action ID, and in fact the part of the document to which you want to be redirected to. So that's there, and not only is it there, but it's in the template for beta. So have fun with that. Now, the next thing I wanted to talk about also was that on the subject of mail, I could actually go back to Designer, excuse me, and I could add I maybe just use this page since it's empty. I have a little button here, and you can see on the events for that button, I can add an action now, and I've got, for a platform that's been confused with a mail platform for the longest time, XPages, for all of its actions, and you can see them all here, never had a send mail action. So you can see right now that there's a new send mail action to be delivered for beta. I can do simple things like send simple mail and have delivery options. But you can see also that it's got an embedded experience UI, which will allow me to take advantage of the new features that are in the social edition. So by way of demoing this particular experience, again, I'm going to go back to the web. I need some, in this particular situation, I think I need some, need to be a different user, because I want to also show that not only does it integrate with Node Social Edition 9, but we are also have the capability of integrating with the ICS offerings for open social containers across the portfolio, including Connections Mail, now available in Connections 4. So if I were to do a similar thing here and create a sample document, so we just say sample doc, and save this document, and this is a slightly customized application. You can see that I have a new action here called share. So now when I share that, you can see that I used the send mail action there actually to send that to a group. The group, one of the members of this group is actually Amy Jones. Unlike Samantha Darn, Amy is here. She has Connections mail set up. I can just refresh. You can see the sample doc has been shared with you. And here, in fact, rather than getting, as in my previous example, I'm really kind of showing a link that I can follow to take me to the actual content next pages. Here is an embedded experience where I'm actually can directly, without being moved anywhere, I can just jump right in and update the document in place. I'm just trying to scroll to the bottom of the document here. Seems to be a little bit saved, that. And you can see that's been saved in place. So again, how did all that work? Well, this is on a remote machine, so I'll just very quickly remote into that machine and show you the design time experience for that. So it's just go there now. So you can see this is the source code based on the same action that I had shown you the UI for previously. You can see that the mail, this is an action group. There's two actions within the group. There's a send mail action, and there's also an action to execute some script following that. But the important one here is you can see that there was a mail sent to Amy Jones in this particular case. That obviously all of these fields are computable and can be based on groups, can be based on context, say computed by server-side JavaScript, etc. So I guess the important part of this is what makes this an embedded experience. Well, the critical thing really here is the embedded JSON. Now the embedded JSON, as you can see, is something that we compute again using server-side JavaScript. And what that does is it extracts the necessary parts of the document and puts them in an envelope so that it delivers the payload that the open social mail container actually needs to give you the embedded experience. In this case, it needs a particular URL in a particular format and wrapped as JSON, which is done here. So it's a look sort of inside the sausage factory to see how this works, but that's how it does work. And again, we'll be following up with some samples here in the social edition time frame. So all good. If I were to kind of jump behind this to my Amy Jones inbox, you can see that again the same mail here exists inside the in Social Edition embedded experience. The same experience is supported inside in Notes itself. Okay, so a lot of send mails, a lot of mail links, a lot of redirects, a lot of embedded experiences. I'll just go back to my notes and see what I need to speak on next. Okay, so XPages in the Notes client, also known as XPink. We took a fresh look at that in the Social Edition. And we mostly took a fresh look at it because of activity in the area, some customers building applications coming back to us with issues that they wanted resolved and that we were able to resolve. But wherever possible, we always tried to push. If something seemed valuable as a generic feature, then we would try and push it back into the core itself. So while I think the most natural segue into this area for me would be to continue to kind of talk about programmability and pushing buttons and doing things like we just completed in SendMail. So one of the criticisms and one of the limitations, I guess, was programmatic access to the client desktop. For when you're building traditional Notes applications, you always had a load of script UI classes which gave you granular control over the workspace, so that you could open databases, you could put icons on the workspace, you could replicate, you could do all that kind of stuff, which is lacking to a large extent in XPages, which is a web-based server-side technology. You have a very strong server-side JavaScript programming model, and we wanted to sort of balance that out in the Notes front end, if you like, by providing something close to the load script UI classes experience. So how do we go about that? So well, in 8.5.1, when we first released, you did have this notion of an XSP client-side library. So you had XSP.alert and XSP.confirm and publish event and so forth. You had a handful of commands that did certain things and did no more than that. Other approaches that we had considered at the time were not deemed sufficiently secure. So what we wanted to do was build on that and to keep obviously all of the security elements intact, but to be able to allow people to expand beyond the bounds of just the 4 or 5, the handful of commands that we provided. So I want to switch back to Designer at this point and give you a little demo of what's possible there today. If I were just to find the application called Demo App, and you can see that I have the demo page open here, in fact. So you can see I've got a number of buttons here on my X page that do different things, and they're designed to show certain classes of certain types of behavior. Like, for example, somebody wants to add a Notes DB to the Notes workspace, or somebody just simply wants to choose a DB but allow the user the ability to do that via visual Notes dialog, the native Notes dialog, and then take the information back from the Notes database picker, plant it into another field so that other parts of the application logic can use it and so forth. Right? So there's that sort of Notes UI workspace concept that Lotus Scripted UI has been very good at. And then there's just the general Eclipse framework that Notes works within. Can you get access to the current window? Can you update the status bar? Can you, launch another application? Can you in fact launch, say, the IE browser altogether? So we have examples here of all of these things. I'll just quickly look at the page in Notes itself. So I'll just go back here to Notes, and you can see got the page open here. Okay, so if I wanted to use a Notes DB picker, I can just simply click this button. I can drop down a dialog. I can pick a server, and I can pick a database from that server, and you'll notice that not only am I hooked into the file IO dialog, but when I simply select this, then all of the fields and all of the properties of that particular database are fed back to me via JavaScript, and my application logic can take it from there. If I wanted to, for example, add a database to the workspace, in my workspace right now, this is a hard-coded database, but nevertheless, I could simply say, you can see here, I've got 5 on the right and 2 on the left, and I'm going to add a very useful database for anybody out there called the XPages Toolbox to my workspace. And if I add that DB and go back to my workspace, you can now see that I have the ability to add these new chiclets. I have the ability there to do all sorts of replications, etc., etc. If I wanted to go back to my database, you can see I can update the Notes status bar with some text. So if you're looking at the bottom left of my screen here, once I click OK, you can see that you have control over the various artifacts I could communicate with, or influence update applications in the sidebar. I can, in fact, this is an interesting one called Launch Embedded IE Browser. So if I go back to Designer to see what that one does. Well, in terms of the command, it simply says, give me an embedded IE browser, and it provides in a particular URL to launch with. So you can see here that it's done exactly that. So from within the XPages embedded Zoolunner browser, we can click a button and you can launch the embedded IE browser with a particular URL and establish a different session and so forth. This is all done securely. And how is this done? Well, it's done by basically just extending the existing mechanism. There's a new, if you are comfortable with Java plugins, which I'm sure most of you are, then you simply implement one interface which allows you to stipulate the commands that you support. You can see these, for each of these commands here, there's a sort of namespace command. So if you wanted to implement the IE launcher, you could simply implement a plugin that says, that admits when queried that yes, I am the implementer of this thing, and then simply implement an execute command that will that will do what you're required to do in that particular instance. You can see here, in fact, that this is the execute command. I'm passed in the context and I'm passed in some parameters. The parameters in this instance are just the URL you want to show. The context is interesting because it will give you kind of access to information that pertains to the XPages window that has called you. So it's all very simple. So what in fact, without going into any further detail, what in fact we're giving you here is client-side JavaScript access to secure Java services on the Notes platform. Those Java services can leverage the Notes UI classes, they can leverage your own Java classes, they can leverage classes that are part of the Eclipse framework, but you decide what goes in, you decide what commands are supported, and you securely install these plugins into the Notes plugin model, and there you go. So a big leap there in terms of functionality for front-end programming. Now, back to my slides. Okay, so I think we've made that clear. Which is the interface that you need is called iExtended commands. It's got two methods to implement. It couldn't be any simpler, really. Okay, I'm going to move on further. Preloading. Preloading was introduced to you in 852, so I don't think there's much of a need to go into it now. But I did want to explain something that we have kind of piggybacked other features on top of this for the social edition. So when Notes applications are opened, the first Xpink application opened in Notes in a given session, we'll call that a cold start, has to do a lot of work. Basically, it has to bootstrap the XPages runtime, and then it's got to actually bootstrap the Java classes that equate to the XPages that you were opening. So that can take a number of seconds to happen, and people can say, right, well, my application is starting up. If they then close the application and reopen it, they notice that it's practically instantaneous. So why is that? Well, it's because the XPages runtime has already been bootstrapped, the web container has been started, and the Zoolunner browser has already been loaded. So you do get the benefits of all of those things when you open an application for the second time. The concept of preloading was such that you could nominate an application in your Notes.ini. Let me just see if I have such an example here. I can come back to it. In fact, it might be better for me just to use it to use the slides on this particular subject, because the yes. So the preload DB was simply the name of an NSF on the XPages you wanted to load, and that NSF can be on a server using the bang bang notation, that server !NSF. So in this instance here, if I go back to my client for a moment, I have preloaded some applications, like random discussion has been preloaded. If I open it here, you can see that it opens instantaneously because of the preloading, basically. We do have other use cases, however, that came up in this release subsequent to that we wanted to address. So I'll focus on those. One is when the application is actually on a remote server, and as you know, when you're running in the Notes client, you do run within the Notes client on the local web container that's embedded in the client. So when your NSF is remote, it's one thing to have all of the Java classes preloaded and in memory, but anything that causes the application to go back to the server for documents or for other design elements will take time. So to that end, network traffic is inherently will have a degrading effect on your performance. And what we found was that with high latency networks, anything that caused excess traffic led to poor performance. We found ways of mitigating that. So while preloading allowed you to preload your Java classes, there are other resources that also need to be loaded, namely script resources like JavaScript, GIF files, images, CSS files, etc. So it would be also very useful if they could be loaded from a local cache as well. One particular criminal in this regard was the compute with form. It's very, very common to in applications, you'll see if you search your XSP files in your templates, for example, for compute with form, you'll see that it's a commonly used feature, and it's mostly harmless as long as the form that you're computing contains metadata, which is really all that XPages ever needs it for. For applications that have pre-existing forms that are simply computed, they can be very large, or arbitrarily large, I should say, based on the fact that they could contain images used for display on the Notes client, etc., etc. Where these have not been optimized, they must be pulled across the net. And they must be pulled across the net, and just the very fact of pulling them across the net can take time and slow down your applications. So what we've done here is that we've combined two features, single copy XPages design, which has been in there and functioning, and preload. So the idea is as follows. If you look at my slide here, you can see that I can go into the XPages properties for any given application, and I can nominate another NSF that simply contains no data but just a design of the database. Okay, so when you're running on a remote application on the client, if this database exists locally, it is considered to be the design replica or the design copy of the functioning database, and it can be opened, and all of the CSS, JavaScript, images, class files, etc. can be extracted from there, including, most importantly, well, perhaps most importantly, the actual form used in compute with form. So this is very significant. You can see, I'll give you a really quick demo of it on the client right now. So you can see here on the workspace I have a blue forum, which when I open is just a discussion database, a standard discussion database that opens as follows. And I can go back, and I have green forum. Now, if you look at the properties of both these databases, they're absolutely identical. If I can look at them in Designer for a moment, I just close this, go to blue forum. I look in application properties. You can see that it launches with a blue theme, and you can see also that green forum, which is exactly the same thing, and launches with a blue theme. So why then, when I open it, does it come up all green? It does that because this is just a proof point, really, that this application, albeit on the server, it opens in a flash, but it's extracted all of its design information from the local GF design NSF, which I nominated to be its design copy here. You can see there's a single design copy. Because this application exists locally, and because where it does exist locally, it in fact has a different theme set to be green, which is why so almost like just a proof point that all of the design artifacts were pulled from the local design copy, and the fact that it opened so quickly was a way of establishing a cache, a local cache, in fact, for XPages that will really mitigate the circumstances where you're running a remote database. Okay, for compute with form, just one proof point here. This is an agent that computes a particularly large form remotely on a slow network, and you can see that when the database is local, the form can run in 15 milliseconds. When it's remote, you're completely at the mercy of the network, and you can see in this particular instance, it took many times that. So opening a document that would compute that form, in fact, might take a minute. So not an ideal experience, and why you should really look at this feature coming up to the social edition. Okay, I'm going to finish on this one. So there's also a run on server option. The run on server option simply, everything I've described so far is really a means of, customizing or optimizing your apps not to use excessive network transactions, etc., and to be a good Notes client citizen. If you don't want to go to that trouble, if your use of the Notes client is less, or you're mostly a web shop, you could do what I've just done, which is to get timed out here. I need to time back in. So it's okay, so I seem to have lost my my smarts in this particular one, and in fact I'm looking at the time as 16:26, which is more or less up anyway. I'll go back to my slide and just simply explain this one, I think. The idea here is that you simply run server-based applications directly on the server. So where the server is actually, where the application is actually remote, and where the server runs a HTTP task, you can use this option, and the UI for this may change, but you can use an option called Run Server Apps directly on the server, which means they run on the server, but in such a way as all of the Xping custom behaviors are preserved, like notes bookmarking and client, the client context menus that are enabled when running in the client and next pages, and the dirty flag and so forth. All of these continue to function, even though, because that work has been done to maintain the context that the application is actually running in the client, even though it's running on the server, if you know what I mean. Now also, some of the applications have been tweaked over time, or have been programmed over time to use this RCP, this Rich Client Platform qualifier, which means that you could do things like, don't show this label, don't render this label when I'm on RCP, the Rich Client Platform, i.e. Notes. You can use it. You can have the same effect by simply using this logic, which means it would work whether you're running on the server or running in the client. So that's the run on server option. It is in CD6, and it will be a good option, I think, in the social edition. So finally, apart from all of the features we've shown you, we've done a lot of work in SBRs and PMRs and fixpacks and hotfixes. We've worked extensively with some customers this year in Unleash the Lab initiative. We've had a performance masterclass in Dublin, which really was an eye-opener to all of us in terms of just how advanced the community has become over the last number of years. This course is oversubscribed in a deep dive session, and there will be, because everybody's asking about it, there will be reference materials to follow on this and OpenNTF shortly. Finally, apart from the two new books that arrived in 2012, we will have a second edition of Mastering X Pages due in 2013. So with all of that, there's been plenty of work happening in the X Pages department, and I'd like to just hand back, and I'll hand back to you, Paul, I think.